Good evening. Welcome to the Mark Hunter Show. Hello, I'm your host, Mark Hunter. Tonight we enter the world of erotic power play. Now, just what is erotic power play? Well, I know in your curious little minds it might mean a lot of different things. But joining me tonight to talk about what it may be and what it actually is noted expert Dr. Gabriele Hoff. And welcome to the show, Gabriele.
Nice to meet you. I'm pleased to be here.
Great. I noticed you have an accent. So where is that accent from?
I'm from Germany. I have lived here in the Bay Area for over 20 years, but I was born and raised in Germany.
You are actually a doctor who has a practice seeing patients, clients?
Yeah, I have a doctoral degree in clinical psychology, and I see clients for consultations. And I probably should explain erotic power play now.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Next question. What exactly is it? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people who have a lot of different ideas about what they think it is.
Yes.
What do you consider it as?
I think that people play with power erotically everywhere. My first specialty of my special population, my focus on my studies was on people involved in consensual BDSM, in bondage and discipline, and consensual sadomasochism, and dominance and submission. But after interviewing over 1,200 people at this point, I started to realize that that's just one end of the spectrum. Those are people who play with erotic power very consciously and very intensely, and sometimes it's a lifestyle, and I saw great people there, wonderful couples. They were the ones in my dissertation film. But when you talk to the other part of the spectrum, people play with power to various degrees, from very little to a little bit more to a lot more to intensely. And playing with power erotically is anything from one partner taking a more aggressive role, the other one being a little more submissive, to pulling hair when having sex, when making love, to playing out fantasies a little bit. That's a bit more advanced already, but enjoying, adoring the other, thinking the other is the greatest person on earth.
A worship.
Yeah.
Right.
So there you have erotic power play, and it's not limited to the niche, which was my first field of examination, the consensual BDSM. And again, there's nothing wrong with consensual BDSM, but it's not for everybody.
Because it sounds like what you're interested in is pretty much mainstream. I mean, I think most couples involve themselves in some form of power play, submission, domination, in some form or another. Is that right?
I agree. And it's not always sexual, and it's not always conscious. But I think that when couples discover that it can be sexual, it can be conscious, that it can be played with, it can be explored, that it can be very additive to their relationship or marriage, or very exciting for their sex life, or a great new variety to what they do. A lot of couples that have been together for a long time sometimes feel a little boredom. Well, with erotic power play, you have a lot of new varieties of activities to do.
So let's get into the role of the psychologist or the psychiatrist. What do you think that they understand or comprehend the forces behind people acting this out, and do they have a positive outlook on erotic power play in general?
Mental health professionals?
Mental health professionals.
No, they generally don't, and that's what got me started. When I was undergraduate at SF State, San Francisco State, I took a lot of human sexuality classes, and it seemed that there was a lot of education going on. But once I got into graduate school, master's level, doctoral level, I was amazed of how little people knew about power play. In case conferences, in workshops, whenever a clinician would discuss a client, a patient who was involved in BDSM, then everybody would appear to think that's where the problem is, when in fact I didn't think that the problem was that just some people who are also into BDSM happen to also have anxiety and depression, like everybody. It's cross-cultural. So I began to really want to educate psychotherapists, and that's what this first film was about, that I showed at the World Congress of Sexology at another conference on psychology and at a lot of agencies. And a lot of reactions happened when I showed these films. A lot of reactions from therapists saying, I had no idea. I'm really glad I saw this. These are really nice, healthy couples. And they play with power quite intensely, or they play SM, whatever they want to say. Some psychotherapists are also saying, I don't care what they say, it's a problem. It's, the absent father, the over-involved mother, the same stuff they used to explain homosexuality on. That used to be a pathology too, right? So I think the field of psychotherapy needs a lot of education, and the rest of the world too.
Well, what are some of the forces that make it so erotic for people to engage in erotic power play? I mean, do you think that people identify with archetypal forces like the predator, or I mean, in general, like a more primordial force? Do you know what I'm getting at? Or
Well, archetypes are very powerful, energetic images there. I think that most people who are interested in erotic power play, first of all, are people who are interested in sex. If you're not interested in sexuality, you probably don't want to do power play, or you don't want to do it much. The archetypes can come up a lot in the fantasies. The good mother, the naughty boy, the good daddy, the little girl, the predator, the damsel in distress, the slave. A lot of these archetypes can come up. And as long as the participants or people who want to play it out with each other are somewhat aware of it, and they do it in a safe and sane and consensual manner, even the predator can be played with very healthily. Because if the predator archetype came up, let's say there's a dominant man who likes to be dominant, and he has a partner, a woman, who enjoys being submissive. And they want to play out a fantasy where he attacks her and rapes her, but she agrees to it. They can full force explore that and play that archetype out, and no harm is done, but hopefully it'll go well and they both get a lot of pleasure out of it, because things can go wrong, where it doesn't feel quite right, and one person says, let's stop it here.
Before anyone engages in the actual act, there has to be some fantasy life around that, correct?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people have a lot of more fantasies than they would admit to. Why do people engage in erotic power play? Is there abuse that causes that? I can most definitely say that is not the cause for it. There is even a lot of research on that I could quote in that I have written about. But I think that the people that play with power are most of all more interested in the sexuality, and that they also are more creative, and they want to try different things, and they if they then connect with a partner who is also interested in that, then things can get more interesting. It can take off.
Right. Do a lot of people have difficulty getting past the inhibition portion of the whole thing? So it's kind of a working out process as it goes along.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, there's a lot of people who have a lot of fantasies and have never done anything about it. A lot of people have a lot of fantasies and they would never even tell their beloved partner about it. A lot of people have a lot of fantasies and they feel very guilty about them or ashamed. A lot of people feel guilty and ashamed about their fantasies, and they may still masturbate thinking about the fantasies, but they would never share the thought with anyone.
Right. So that would be the path to leading to greater intimacy, I guess. People connecting on that level and then working past their inhibitions together.
Right.
And is that the primary part of joy for you in your work, or is that what you like doing, or helping people overcome that, getting past those barriers to actually actualize these fantasies or these forces that people want to actualize?
That is wonderful when that happens.
Yeah.
And it is a very rewarding experience when I am working with a couple and they are a little shy and timid about it, but they do want to take that risk of discussing their fantasies. It's a lot of risk taking. You are exposing yourself. You're telling your partner, you know, I have this fantasy or that fantasy, and the partner could have a negative reaction to it, you know. But when that goes well, I have seen wonderful results in relationships. Mm-hmm. Then, of course, there are other situations where one partner is really very interested in the fantasies and the other partner is not. That happens often too. That can be very problematic. It's not unlike any issue that comes up in a relationship where one partner really, really wants to travel and the other one doesn't.
So it's taking a risk actually even bringing up the whole subject in the first place.
And depending on the intensity of the fantasy too. You know, if somebody just has a little fantasy of wanting to maybe a heterosexual couple, the man would like his female partner to dress up in high heels, so that might not be so risky. But if he wanted to have her tie him up, that would be a lot more risky, you know, because it goes across against a given gender role. It brings up a lot of issues around masculinity, femininity. It makes a woman very nervous. Why does he want that? Is he confused? I've seen that a lot in couples. Right. But the couples that stay with it usually manage to work through it one way or the other.
So it is a long process in order to develop that closeness and get beyond the point where you actually are self-conscious that you're playing a role. In other words, to drop down and let the intimacy take over and just totally absorb yourself into the role that you're playing.
It takes a lot of time to get that confidence for some people. For some people, they're natural. They are not terribly inhibited. They are comfortable in their sexuality. And, let's just add something else. You know, that is great. But I think to be comfortable in your sexuality is a very good thing to be in a relationship or on your own, because if you're not comfortable in your sexuality, then everything related to sexuality can be a little bit of a problem. So if couples want to go into role-playing or exploring a little bit of bondage or a little bit of spankings or whatever they want to do, acting out fantasies, they will need to look at their sexuality first. Are they comfortable with their bodies somewhat? Are they comfortable with who they are? Are they comfortable with each other? Are they comfortable expressing what they want? It's a lot of communication that goes in.
But there is an erotic component too, a mental aspect.